At family dinner, my sister brought her new boyfriend and everyone went totally silent. When he asked what I do, my mom snickered, "Let's not ruin the appetite." My sister added, "Just say you're figuring stuff out again." They all laughed. I didn't. I just ate, nodded, and said nothing. A week later, I transferred $500,000 into my new property. The one my parents have been trying to buy for years. Then I invited the whole family for a catch-up brunch, and welcomed them holding their rejected loan paper. My mother Eleanor's laugh still echoes in my head. Not her words, no, those were bad enough, but that little snort she does when she's trying to be cruel, pretending she isn't. That smug, nose-crinkling sound that screams, "Oh, bless your heart, but you'll never be more than the family punchline, will you?" And for 34 years, that's exactly who Ethan, was. The guy who almost made it. The air in their dining room was always thick with unspoken judgment, even when everyone was smiling. It's a room that hasn't changed in 2 decades, same heavy oak table, same mismatched rustic candles Eleanor insists on. Normally, I'd skip these Sunday dinners. But this time, my sister Chloe begged me to come, said there was someone she wanted me to meet. I should have known better, honestly. Should have just stayed home with my spreadsheets, in peace. But I thought, why not try to be normal for one night? Everyone was already seated when I walked in, Eleanor, Richard, Chloe, and some guy I didn't recognize. Clean-shaven, slick hair, an expensive blazer. He stood when I entered. "Ethan, this is Liam," Chloe beamed, her voice saccharine sweet. "Liam, my brother." We shook hands, his grip was firm. He looked exactly like the type of guy who'd call himself a finance bro, ironically, but also, completely seriously. Dinner started fine. Small talk, wine, Chloe recounting some incredible story about a pitch deck she totally slayed. I stayed quiet, mostly, pushing peas around my plate, answering only when directly asked. Until Liam turned to me, all charm and teeth, and asked, "So, Ethan, what do you do?" The room went silent. Not a natural silence, but the kind where someone hits a mute button. And then Eleanor laughed. Not a warm, funny laugh. That laugh. That sharp little bark that just screams, he has no idea what he's doing with his life. She waved her hand dismissively, like shooing away a fly. "Oh, let's not ruin the appetite." Chloe, never missing a beat, giggled. "Just say you're figuring things out again." Richard chuckled too, a forced, hollow sound trying to soften the cruelty that just didn't land. They all laughed. I didn't. I just nodded, took a bite of mashed potatoes, and stared at my plate like it was suddenly the most fascinating thing in the world. No one noticed. Or maybe they did, and they just didn't care. I left early that night. But I didn't sulk. I didn't spiral. I didn't text Chloe a passive-aggressive essay about boundaries. Instead, I opened my laptop, logged into the dashboard of a holding company I'd quietly built, and approved a wire transfer for $500,000. It was the down payment on a property I'd been watching for years, a gorgeous 3-story house in Maplewood Heights that Eleanor and Richard had tried, and failed, to buy for over a decade. Their retirement dream home. They could never get the financing right. But I could. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I just scheduled a casual brunch for the following Sunday. Texted Chloe, Eleanor, Richard, catch up at a new spot. Bring Liam. They all RSVP'd yes. They had no idea. And when they showed up, all dressed up and ready to smile through a meal they expected me to pay for, I greeted them at the front door of my new house. I was wearing a blazer, holding a manila folder in one hand and a rejection letter in the other. Eleanor blinked. "Ethan, whose house is this?" I just smiled. Then I handed her the letter. But let me rewind. Before that brunch, those stunned faces, that fallout. There's so much more you need to know. Like the real reason I kept my success a secret. What happened with my first business? Why Eleanor and Richard never trusted me again after one phone call in 2015. And why, after all these years, this was the moment I finally decided to pull the pin. You want to talk revenge? Let's start with the betrayal that lit the fuse. Let's go way back. Before the mashed potatoes, before the silence, before the laughter at my expense. Back to when I actually believed being quiet and competent would earn respect. When I thought keeping my head down, working hard, would somehow make up for not playing their game. It's funny how disrespect builds slowly. It's not a slap, it's a slow, insidious drip. A comment here, a joke there, a look that lingers too long when someone asks what you've been up to. For me, it started the year after I dropped out of grad school. I joined a tiny team building back-end infrastructure for a cloud-based analytics tool. Sexy, I know. 6 of us, crammed into a room with peeling paint and a whiteboard full of code, running on caffeine and cheap pizza. No salary, just equity. I didn't care. I was obsessed. It was the first time in my life I felt like I was building something that truly mattered. 2 years later, the company was acquired. My cut, after taxes? Just over $1.2 million. I didn't throw a party. Didn't buy a Tesla. I didn't even upgrade my apartment. I just moved into a slightly nicer one-bedroom and started learning everything I could about investing, real estate, angel funding. I opened LLCs, talked to lawyers, made mistakes, lost money, made it back, kept my circle small. But none of that mattered to my family. As far as they were concerned, I'd quit grad school, fizzled out, and never recovered. Because I didn't walk around flashing a Rolex or posting inspirational LinkedIn quotes about hustle culture, they just assumed I was drifting. Meanwhile, Chloe was rising like a champagne bubble. She got a job at a boutique marketing firm straight out of Georgetown, promoted 2 months later. A year after that, they flew her to Barcelona. She posted filtered selfies on yachts with captions like, "So grateful for this journey," racking up likes from everyone. Eleanor even printed one of her posts and put it on the fridge. I wish I was kidding. Every Sunday dinner became some variation of Chloe's latest triumph. And Ethan, they'd say, "You'll get there eventually." It didn't matter that Chloe still asked Richard for help with her rent every few months. Didn't matter that I paid mine in full, on time, plus the mortgage on a duplex I never even mentioned. They were looking at optics. Chloe was shiny. I was not. But I let it slide. For years, I kept showing up, biting my tongue, letting the jabs roll off. I thought I was being mature. I thought I was choosing peace. Until the day they stole from me. Not literally, not in the way you might expect. No one emptied my bank account or forged a signature. What they took was far worse than money. It was trust. It was dignity. It started with my cousin, Noah. Noah and I were close growing up. He was like a little brother, video games, Lego cities, dumb jokes that made no sense. He struggled academically but had a good heart. He always looked up to me. A few years back, Noah called me in a panic. His fiancée had left him, he'd been laid off, was crashing on a friend's couch, maxed out 2 credit cards. I asked what he needed. I don't know, just help. So, I helped. Quietly. I gave him $5,000. No questions asked. Told him it wasn't a loan, just a gift to get him back on his feet. He cried. I didn't tell anyone, not even Eleanor and Richard. A month later, he got a job in warehouse logistics. He'd text me updates every few weeks. I was proud of him. Then came Chloe's engagement. She met Liam during some networking retreat in Palm Springs. 6 months later, he was on one knee in front of a drone camera, proposing on a cliffside. Of course, it went viral. Of course, Eleanor cried. Of course, Richard offered to pay for the wedding before they even asked. They set the date for the following summer and booked the most ridiculous venue I'd ever seen, a converted winery with chandeliers made from antique decanters. Chloe asked me to be a groomsman. Not the best man, no, that was Liam's college roommate who once got arrested for a bar fight over karaoke. But sure, I said yes. I even offered to help financially. I didn't want to. God knows they weren't shy about flaunting their spending, but I thought, maybe this is a peace offering. Maybe this is how I rebuild things. I told Chloe I could contribute up to $15,000 for the honeymoon or whatever extras they needed. She smiled, hugged me, and said I was surprisingly generous. Weeks passed. No thank you. No update. Until one day, I noticed a strange charge on one of my business accounts. A withdrawal for $8,500, labeled Event Deposit, Chloe J. and M. My stomach sank. I checked again. The transaction was made using a virtual card I'd issued to Noah months ago, back when he needed help and didn't have his own card. I'd forgotten to revoke it. It had a low limit. I figured it was harmless. Apparently not. I called Noah. No answer. I texted, "Did you use the card I gave you for Chloe's wedding?" He replied with a single word, "Sorry." That was it. I called Chloe. She picked up on the second ring, all chirpy. "Hey, big bro, what's up?" "I need to ask you something," I said slowly. "Did you ask Noah to use my business card for your wedding?" Silence. Then, well, technically, I didn't ask him. He offered. "You knew it was linked to my account." Another pause. "He said it was one of your business cards, and I figured, what's the big deal? You said you wanted to help. I said I'd give you 15 grand. Not have someone steal from one of my companies." Oh my God, Ethan, don't be so dramatic. It's not like it hurt you. That line. It's not like it hurt you. Something inside me snapped. This wasn't about money. It was about principle. About the years of disregard, the dismissal, the way they saw my success as a myth until it suited them. I hung up. 10 minutes later, I revoked every virtual card I'd ever issued. An hour later, I locked down every business account, changed passwords, added two-factor authentication, everything. That night, Eleanor called. "I heard there was some mix-up with Chloe's wedding payment," she said, her voice dripping with faux concern. "You really didn't need to overreact like this. You know how tight things are with the venue." I didn't say anything. She sighed. "Sweetheart, you're not struggling like Noah or Chloe. Can't you just let it go?" That was the moment I realized they didn't see me as family. Not really. Not the way they saw Chloe. I was a resource. A wallet with legs. The weird older brother with mysterious startups and no real job title, who could be milked when necessary and ignored the rest of the time. So, I didn't let it go. I made a list that night. Every slight. Every time I was laughed at, every loan never repaid, every fake apology, every holiday dinner where I was the punchline. And I started planning. Not a tantrum. Not a big, fiery confrontation. No yelling, no ultimatums. Just chess. Quiet, precise moves. Like buying the property they'd been trying to acquire for years. The one Eleanor used to point out every time we drove past it. "One day that'll be ours," she'd say. The perfect retirement house. She even submitted an offer once. Rejected. Financing issues. They tried again last year. Still no dice. I'd been watching it, not originally to buy it. But now, it felt poetic. The owners were still interested in selling. They remembered the previous lowball offer from Eleanor and Richard. I didn't lowball. I paid asking, in cash, through one of my LLCs. They didn't even know I'd done it. Not yet. Because first, I wanted them to underestimate me one more time. Hence the dinner. Hence the laughter. Hence the "let's not ruin the appetite." I took it all in. Let them have their little moment. Let them think I was still the same passive Ethan they could mock and manipulate. And then, a week later, I scheduled brunch. Not at a restaurant. At my new house. There's, once upon a dream. When they pulled into the driveway, wearing polite smiles and brunch attire, they still didn't get it. Not until I opened the door. Not until I handed Eleanor the envelope. Not until she opened it, unfolded the paper, and saw her own rejected mortgage application stapled to a welcome letter from my holding company. The look on her face? That was worth every second of quiet I'd endured. But that moment, the reveal, that was just the beginning. Revenge isn't about a single blow. It's about the long game. And I was just getting started. You know, I didn't used to think of myself as someone who needed revenge. I thought I was above all that. For the longest time, I believed if I just kept my head down, stayed quiet, worked hard, built something real, eventually people would see me for who I was. Not the dropout, not the failed genius, just someone who made it in his own way. Someone who didn't need to scream for attention. But I was wrong. For years, I waited. I waited for Eleanor and Richard to ask how things were going, not out of politeness, but out of actual curiosity. I waited for Chloe to stop seeing me as her fallback option, the brother who was only useful when things got messy. I waited for even one moment of genuine respect from the people who were supposed to know me best. It never came. What came instead were the jokes, the passive-aggressive comments, the loaded questions, the borrowed money that never got paid back, the years of family events where I was treated like the cautionary tale. But I didn't become who I am because of them. I became who I am in spite of them. To explain how, we need to rewind. Way past the brunch, past the betrayal, back to a time when I truly thought I'd lost everything. Let me tell you about 2015. The real rock bottom. Not the awkward family dinner kind of low. I'm talking about the kind of low where you wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, heart pounding, because you're not sure if you can make rent. The kind where your savings account is a joke, your fridge is mostly condiments, and every missed call might be a debt collector. It was 6 months after the startup I worked for got acquired. Everyone assumed I was set for life. And, yeah, I did cash out with 7 figures on paper, but I was young, stupid. I didn't realize half of it was tied up in restricted stock that wouldn't fully vest for years. I burned through too much, too fast, thinking the next big payout was right around the corner. I invested in a tech project that completely tanked. I loaned money to a former coworker who ghosted me. Worst of all, I put a deposit on a property development deal that turned out to be a scam. Suddenly, my $1 million future was reduced to a few $1,000 and a panic attack that wouldn't quit. That's when the calls started from Richard. Not asking how I was doing, but telling me what a mistake I'd made. You walked away from a PhD to chase some Silicon Valley pipe dream, he said. And now what? You expect us to bail you out? I never asked them for money. Not once. But I did call once because I was scared. I thought maybe just hearing a calm voice would help. That call ended with Eleanor saying, well, maybe this will teach you some humility. Click. That was the moment I knew I was truly on my own. So, I rebuilt. Not all at once. It was slow. Messy. I took freelance coding gigs for embarrassing rates. Spent nights debugging finance apps for people who thought agile just meant fast. I slept 4 hours a night, drank too much coffee, stopped talking to most people I knew. And I learned. I learned how to manage contracts, how to spot scammers, how to protect my assets, how to take calculated risks instead of dumb ones. I incorporated my first LLC in 2016, using it to broker data consulting gigs between small firms and independent coders. By 2017, I had 2 contractors working under me and a client base that respected me, not because I was flashy, but because I delivered. It was during this time that I bought my first property, a 2-unit rental in a transitional neighborhood. Ugly on the outside, solid bones on the inside. I lived in one unit, rented the other. Fixed it up myself on weekends, watching YouTube tutorials on drywall and plumbing. Ate microwave meals on a milk crate while building spreadsheets for the next investment. That duplex cash flowed within 6 months. I refinanced it after a year and used the equity to buy a triplex, then another. Then I started structuring everything under layered LLCs for liability protection. By 2020, I was quietly managing 9 doors across 3 neighborhoods, with tenants I knew by name and reserves stashed away for every property. And still, I said nothing. Not to Chloe, not to Eleanor and Richard, not to Noah who owed me money, or the aunt who always asked if I'd found a real job yet. Why? Because part of me still hoped the results would speak for themselves. Spoiler, they didn't. I remember one Thanksgiving, 2019. I'd driven 5 hours to be there. Eleanor sat me next to a folding chair and asked Chloe's boyfriend at the time, some guy named Caleb, if he had any career tips for me. He worked in social media. I built infrastructure systems that powered analytics for multi-million-dollar companies. But sure, let's hear what Caleb had to say about success. That night, I sat in my car for 30 minutes before driving home. Didn't cry. Didn't rage. Just stared at the dashboard and thought, if they don't see it now, they never will. So, I stopped hoping. And I started planning. I built a second company. This one fully remote, leveraging a team of niche developers overseas to build custom integrations for e-commerce businesses. It was scalable, profitable, boring in all the right ways. I bought more properties. I turned down a $3.2 million acquisition offer in 2021 because I didn't need the liquidity. And all through it, I said nothing. Until Chloe stole from me. That was the crack in the dam. The moment I realized silence wasn't peace. It was permission. So, I stopped being silent. First, by buying the Maplewood Heights house. That was symbolic. Yeah. But it was also strategic, prime location, undervalued, and my parents had already done all the legwork trying to buy it twice. I knew exactly what renovations it needed, what the zoning rules were, and how to maximize its value. Then I planned the brunch. I didn't tell them it was my house. I just said, found a cool new brunch spot. You'll love it. Sunday at noon, don't be late. I spent the morning of the brunch making sure everything was perfect. Coffee brewed, fruit tray chilled, music low. I had 3 envelopes on the table, each containing a copy of the rejected mortgage application Eleanor and Richard had submitted, along with a purchase letter from my company and a business card clipped to the front. When they arrived, Eleanor was first through the door. "This place is stunning," she said, eyes wide. "Whose is it?" I smiled and handed her the envelope. Chloe was behind her, Liam in tow. He glanced around, visibly impressed. "This yours, Ethan?" I just nodded. Chloe blinked. "Wait, you bought this house?" Eleanor opened the envelope. Her face went pale. She recognized the letterhead immediately. I didn't say a word. Didn't have to. Richard finally stepped inside, frowning. "What's going on?" I walked past them into the kitchen, poured myself a coffee. Then I turned, leaned against the counter, and said, "Brunch is served." And that was the moment the game changed. That was the moment they realized the version of me they kept mocking no longer existed. My rise wasn't about money. It was about choice. I chose to stop begging for their approval. I chose to stop shrinking so they could feel big. I chose to build something real. Not because they believed in me, but because I did. And now I had their full attention. But what I did next, that's the part they never saw coming. Because revenge isn't loud. It's deliberate. And mine had only just begun. The thing about revenge is it isn't loud. It's patient. It's that second breath you take before reacting. It's every insult you ever swallowed, compressed into a plan that doesn't shout, it waits. And I'd been waiting a long time. The brunch was just the first act. It was never meant to be the knockout blow, just the opening bell. The real setup started after they walked out of that house with silence on their lips and confusion in their eyes. Let me walk you through what happened next. After the brunch, I didn't reach out. No calls, no texts, not even a thank you for coming. I knew they were stewing, especially Chloe. I imagined the conversations in their living room, Eleanor going quiet, Richard pacing, Chloe pacing louder, Liam probably whispering, "Did you know he could afford something like that?" They didn't know. That was the point. I didn't build my success to show off. I built it because I was sick of being powerless. But now that I had power, I realized I'd never actually used it. Not really. Until now. The first thing I did was dig deeper into Eleanor and Richard's failed offers on the house. I called the real estate agent they'd worked with. He remembered them immediately. Nice people, but their financing always fell through. He was surprised when I introduced myself as the new owner. "Oh, that's funny," he said. "Your mom, Eleanor, called me the day after the house went off market. Said she had a better offer. I had to tell her it sold in full cash." She sounded stunned. I smiled. "Yeah." I think it hit her harder than expected. I asked him for copies of the offer letters they'd submitted. "Just for reference," I said. What I didn't tell him was I planned to frame them. I had a guest room in the new house, technically a den in the listing, but I turned it into what I now call the Office of Inconvenient Truths. Framed on the wall, their 2 rejected offers, their mortgage pre-approval denial, a printout of the public deed showing my holding company as the owner. It wasn't for them. It was for me. Because I wanted to remember how easily power can be taken if you forget who you are. The second step in the setup was Noah, my cousin. The one who used my business card without permission. We hadn't spoken since the incident. I knew Chloe had thrown him under the bus when I called her out, said he offered to pay for something he had no business touching. But I didn't want revenge on Noah. I wanted clarity. So, I invited him to coffee. Neutral ground. He showed up late, nervous, hands in his hoodie pockets like a teenager caught smoking. "Thanks for meeting me," he mumbled. I nodded. "You're lucky I didn't file charges." His face went pale. "I didn't mean." Chloe said. "She said it was fine." I held up a hand. "I know what she said. I want to know what you think." He looked around like someone might be listening. "Honestly, I thought it was weird. She told me you were helping pay for the wedding, and that you gave me the card as a backup. I figured if you're loaded, what's a few grand, right?" I tilted my head. "Do you think I'm loaded?" Noah hesitated. "I mean, yeah, but you never said anything. You drive that beat-up Camry. I thought you were still struggling." I exhaled. Exactly. Noah wasn't malicious, just misinformed. And Chloe had weaponized that. Before we left, I handed him an envelope. Inside an invoice. $8,500, plus interest. He blinked. "You want me to pay this?" "No," I said. "I want you to frame it. Put it somewhere you'll see every day. Because that's the price of not asking questions before you swipe someone else's card." He nodded quietly. No argument. And then I walked away. One thread tied. Dozens more to go. Next came Chloe. I didn't go to her directly. That would be too easy. Instead, I reached out to a friend of hers, Ava. Someone I'd met a few times at Chloe's parties. Ava worked in real estate branding and occasionally consulted for boutique agencies. Over drinks, I casually asked if she knew anything about Liam's current employment. She raised an eyebrow. "You mean unemployment?" "Oh." Apparently, Liam's fintech startup had crashed 6 months ago, burned through VC money like a bonfire. He'd been scrambling ever since, living off Chloe's salary and telling everyone he was between rounds. Interesting. I thanked Ava, bought her another drink, and went home thinking. Chloe had built her whole identity around perfection, her job, her fiancé, her Instagrammable life. But I knew the cracks were spreading, and all I had to do was wait. But waiting wasn't enough. I needed something to move the needle. So, I started building a paper trail. I compiled every text, every email, every receipt showing Chloe using or directing others to use my resources without consent. I pulled transaction histories, Slack DMs from contractors she'd borrowed during her wedding planning, even a PDF of the catering invoice that mysteriously got billed to a company I own through a shared vendor. All of it went into a neat folder titled Family Write-Offs. Because it wasn't just theft, it was arrogance. Chloe assumed I'd never notice, or if I did, that I'd never say anything. But she was wrong. And the final piece, the business dinner. A friend of mine, Stella, runs a mid-size marketing agency downtown. She's sharp, connected, and owed me a favor. I told her I had a candidate she should meet for a potential branding project, a mid-level marketer looking to pivot into consulting. I gave her Chloe's number and watched the trap unfold. Chloe showed up to the meeting thinking it was a job offer. She brought her best blazer, her power smile, and a portfolio of recycled campaigns. Stella kept it professional, polite, but cold. Halfway through dinner, she asked Chloe how she managed budgets. "Oh, I always find creative ways to make things work," Chloe said, sipping wine. "Sometimes I even leverage friends or family resources to close a gap." Stella smiled. Interesting choice of words. Chloe paused. "Excuse me?" Stella slid a folder across the table. Inside, the catering invoice, a screenshot of the card charge, the wedding planner's email thanking Ethan for his contribution. Chloe's face, I'm told, went white. Stella leaned back. "I think we're done here." Chloe called me that night, furious. "How dare you set me up?" I didn't raise my voice. "You set yourself up. I just made sure someone was watching this time." "You're pathetic," she hissed. "Just because you bought a house doesn't mean you're better than everyone." I almost laughed. "Chloe, I've never wanted to be better than anyone. I just want to be left alone. But since that's apparently not possible, I've decided to start participating in this little family theater." "You think you're clever," she snapped. "But you're just bitter." "No," I said quietly. "I'm free." Click. No yelling. No drama. Just truth. And once the truth was out, the silence that followed was glorious. But I wasn't done. I still had one more card to play, one more setup, one final checkmate. And it would require everything I'd learned, every lesson, every scar, every rejection and insult. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about hurting them. It's about showing them. Showing them who you became when they stopped looking. And I was about to show them everything. You've been with me through the setup, the planning, the slow burn revelations, the soft power plays that nudged the cracks in my family wide open. But this part, this is where everything converged. Where years of being underestimated became the engine for one of the most satisfying moments of my life. Let me walk you through how it all ended. After Chloe's ambush dinner with Stella, the one that shattered her illusion of invincibility, she went radio silent. I didn't hear from her for 2 weeks. Not a word. I imagine she was scrambling, trying to recover from the embarrassment, trying to control the narrative. That's what Chloe does when her image starts to crumble. She performs damage control, not introspection. Eleanor and Richard, on the other hand, pretended like nothing had happened. They didn't bring up the house. They didn't mention the brunch. They didn't call, text, or show up at my door. At first, I thought maybe they were waiting for an apology, that I'd somehow humiliated the family by demonstrating what I'd accomplished without them. But the longer the silence stretched, the more I realized they weren't waiting for anything. They were just avoiding reality. And I wasn't going to let them. So, I wrote an email. One I'd been drafting in my head for months. It was short, precise, unemotional. Subject, ownership and closure. Hi, Eleanor, Richard. I hope you're both well. I wanted to formally inform you that, as of last month, I became the legal owner of the Maplewood Heights property you attempted to purchase in 2017 and again in 2022. I paid in full, in cash, under my holding company, Ridge and Echo Investments. This isn't meant as an announcement to provoke or hurt. It's simply an acknowledgement that I've spent the past decade building something real. Despite your doubts, despite the jokes, and despite being treated as the cautionary tale of the family. I'll be living in the property part-time and using the rest for a short-term rental project. There's no obligation for you to interact with it, or with me, unless you choose to. But I will no longer tolerate being disrespected, dismissed, or used. Chloe's unauthorized use of my business account for her wedding expenses has been documented and handled privately. I do not intend to pursue legal action, but I reserve the right to change my mind should further boundaries be crossed. If you'd ever like to have an honest conversation as adults, without mockery, I'm open to that. But until then, I wish you all the best. Ethan. I hit send. Then I blocked them on everything temporarily. Not out of spite, but to give myself peace. The kind of peace that only comes when you finally stop waiting for the people who hurt you to say, "I'm sorry." Then I turned my attention to the final stage of my plan. See that property? It wasn't just a house. It was leverage. Because Eleanor and Richard didn't just like the house. They needed it. Over the years, they'd built a narrative around it, that it would be their retirement home, that they'd gut the kitchen and host grandkids for Sunday dinners. Eleanor had a Pinterest board. Richard had blueprints. They used to drive past it and say, "That's where we'll finally breathe easy." And now I owned it. And they couldn't stand it. A week after my email, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Richard. His voice was tight. Tense. "Ethan, listen. Your mother Eleanor's been a little shaken up. We weren't expecting all of this. We've been thinking. Maybe there's a way we can work something out with the house. If it's about money, we can talk terms. Let's be reasonable here." I listened to that voicemail 5 times. Then I did something very deliberate. I printed it, framed it, and hung it right next to the framed rejection letters. Then I drafted my response. "Hi, Richard. Thanks for reaching out. This isn't about money. It never was. But if you're still interested in the property, I do have an option that might suit you. I'm converting the upstairs into a luxury short-term rental suite. I'd be happy to reserve it for you and Eleanor at the family rate for $150 a night, 2-night minimum. It comes with a complimentary welcome basket, fresh linens, and a printed copy of your previous mortgage denial in the guest binder. Let me know if you'd like to book warmly. Ethan." I never heard back from him or from Eleanor. But that was okay. Because revenge isn't about hearing you were right. It's about not needing to hear it anymore. As for Chloe, she wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. 2 months after the dinner disaster, she texted me. No apology, no explanation. Just, "Are you serious about pressing charges for the card thing?" I didn't respond. She texted again an hour later. "Ethan, come on. Don't ruin my life over a misunderstanding." And then, "We're family." That one made me laugh. Because family was the word they always used when they needed something, never when they gave it. So I sent one final reply, "We were family. Now we're just people who share DNA." Then I forwarded the invoice again. This time to both her personal and work email. She paid it quietly. No memo, no note. I don't think she'd ever been more afraid of me than in that moment. Not because I was threatening, but because I was done. You want to know the funny part? The moment I stopped chasing respect, I found it. Not from them, but from people who actually mattered. Tenants who thanked me for fixing things on time. Contractors who knew I'd never stiff them. Clients who sent referrals because I treated them like partners, not paychecks. I became someone people trusted, not because I demanded it, but because I earned it. And now I live the kind of quiet life that used to make my family roll their eyes. I don't post on social media. I don't show off. I don't try to prove anything. But I do host brunch. Every other Sunday, I invite friends over to the Maplewood Heights house. We sit on the sunlit porch where Eleanor once dreamed she'd retire. We drink coffee. We eat pancakes. We laugh. And every once in a while, a car slows down in front of the house for a second before speeding off again. I like to think it's them, driving past the life they could have been part of. If only they treated me like more than a disappointment. And as I sip my coffee, surrounded by people who chose me without obligation, I think, this is the best kind of revenge. Not burning bridges, but building something so beautiful. What do you think was the true turning point for me?